everybody. This is Joe from the Middle Ground Nightclub. This catches everybody doing well. Just doing the quick hits for Saturday's news. Going to be recording a podcast today with Martin Henson. Seems like a really interesting guy. Seems very down to earth from everything that I've read. He's big on a lot of multiple issues: masculinity, social justice, writing, society, culture, mental health. Issues related to black men, things of that nature, right? Seems like a great guy. Looking forward to that tonight. Let's touch base a little bit on Iran, and I'm a little bummed out that Trump approved an attack plan on Iran, even if they don't go through with it. It's not our conflict. I get about the nuclear program, but it's not our conflict. Benjamin Netanyahu is a menace, not Israel. Not Jewish people. Benjamin Netanyahu is a menace. We don't need to be starting any more wars. When we talk about the Middle East, Saudi Arabia is one of our biggest partners. And, our support for Israel, through the Gaza war was pushing Saudi Arabia towards doing, certain joint military exercises with Iran. And they're generally, enemies or not good with each other, whichever you want to call it. So I just think it's a terrible idea. Today they're talking about the president of Turkey is willing to establish a dialogue between the United States and Iran, kind of get everybody together and hopefully put an end to this conflict. But the one downside, let me phrase it, not downside, the one key factor here is Israel has to stop its attacks for Iran to come to the table. I think it's perfectly reasonable. Perfectly reasonable. I get that there's a lot of suspicions, and they probably have proof about Iran funneling certain money to terrorist groups, things of that nature. But newsflash, Israel and American governments funnel things to money that they probably hate too. That doesn't make it okay. It doesn't make it an excuse, but that can't be a pre-justification to start attacking a nation's capital. It just can't be. We've got to be willing to come to the table, especially when Israel's got a country like the United States behind it. Europe would be willing to help negotiate peace too. Obviously, Turkey's willing to. Saudi Arabia, there's a lot of avenues we can go before we have to go down this road, but Israel chose to just kind of go for it. And Trump said that Israel was planning to assassinate the supreme leader of Iran. That's a terrible idea. World War I was started because of a similar situation. No, stop assassinating leaders. Let's focus on remembering that people in different countries have a right to live how they choose. As long as they're not doing harm to us physically or doing anything like that of that nature, mind our own business. It's as simple as that. That's kind of where I stand on that. Apparently they're open to a similar type of deal that's similar to the 2015 nuclear deal to end the current conflict. I don't think they can get that from Trump because that was pretty much giving Iran a cash grab. So I don't see that one happening. Israel's using F-14 jets. The U.S. Department has begun evacuation flights from Israel. Israeli foreign minister claims attacks on Iran set back its building of a nuclear bomb by 2 or 3 years. They're saying they have a, legitimate nuclear program. Iran saying it'll consider weapon shipments to Israel legitimate targets. That's Iran pretty much saying, if you give guns to Israel, we're going to bomb your stuff. I mean, we need to take a step back and de-escalate this before more innocent people die. These are governments fighting, not the citizens. These are governments. The citizens are made up in an army because that's literally what you're required to do in both those countries. But this is not a good situation for anybody. Not at all. We need to put an end to this fairly quickly. Moving on to other news, not other news, but another part of this. Tucker Carlson pretty much made mincemeat of Ted Cruz, and I agree with Tucker Carlson on it. If you're calling for regime change, things like that. You should know what you're talking about with Israel. Like, how can you not know the population of Iran when you're calling for a regime change there? How can you not know these things about the country you're calling for essentially destruction of its government? I mean, it's different if you're a dictator in a foreign country and that's not your concern, but you're a United States senator. You're supposed to be above that. You're supposed to know why you're doing what you're doing. And to say that the Bible's commanding you to do it violates everything that the U.S. Constitution says that we shouldn't do. I'm a Christian. I believe in God. I believe in the Bible. And I get where people can interpret that as, we're supposed to back Israel no matter what, but also at the same time, the U.S. Constitution is supposed to be a separation of church and state, and invoking the Bible as a reason to attack another country in spirit violates everything our Constitution stands for. In spirit, it violates it. I don't know legally because I'm not a lawyer, but it has to be one of the most ignorant statements in recent history outside of, I'm sure you can nitpick, our current president, but I mean, that's here nor there. Wow, I'm not generally a huge Tucker Carlson guy, but the one thing I like is he has his principles and he stands on regardless of what party you're in. He does tend to be a little bit more good with conservatives, right? Because his values are a little bit more conservative. So, let's give Tucker Carlson the benefit, right? Hey, man, he stuck by his guns. A lot of people flip-flop to make it work for themselves. Tucker Carlson, no, pretty much said, this is wrong. What we're doing is wrong. You guys are pretty much being a stooge for Benjamin Netanyahu. And that's pretty much what is happening. I'm trying to think of the best way to put this. Ted Cruz. I'm just trying to think of the best way to put it here. I would expect more out of a U.S. senator. I would expect somebody like Trump who ran on peace, let's get out of these wars, to not jump to having a military plan, at least not one published, right? You always got to have a readiness plan, but I think publishing it was a severe mistake. Or putting it out there, whatever you want to call it. That's just, it's frustrating. We can do better, guys. We can do a lot better. Ted Cruz, do better. You can do better. You're a smart man. You're not stupid. Your opinion on it's stupid, but you're not stupid. But, it was pretty much like, a lot of people are saying, Iran's not some cartoon filled with, whatever. These are real people. Cruz was recently quoted as saying Iran is the most acute threat the United States faces today. Bullshit. The most acute threat we face today, if you want to talk about foreign governments, is China. Possibly Russia. The founding fathers of the United States said we should mind our own business, essentially. Don't do business with the Middle East because we don't have the same values they do. I'm not saying we shouldn't do business with them, but it's not our place to tell them how to live. We don't think as they do, and they don't think as we do. And if the people there want change, they are more than capable of creating the change that they want. They've done it in the Arab summer and the Arab spring. They've done these things. So let them manage their own affairs. Stay out of it. Do business with them for oil, whatever, commerce, things of that nature. But when it comes to how they live and their governments, mind our own business. We've got other problems to worry about. We got way more bigger problems to worry about. So that's just a quick tidbit on the news. It's a bummer that we're even having to go through that. Juneteenth seems to have been pretty good for a lot of people this week. So, I don't know how to say happy Juneteenth. Congratulations to the African American community. It's something that is well deserved for them. I don't know how to properly say. Is it happy Juneteenth, good Juneteenth? I do not know that part. Let's see. Oh, now they're saying that the United States moves B-2 bombers as Trump weighs Iran options. Oof. The people are trying to get out of Iran. That's just crazy to me. This is a very disappointing situation for someone who, one of the reasons why I kind of like the current president is because he was like, hey, we need to mind our own business. We got our own problems. Not getting involved in more. Come on, Mr. President, do better, be better. Hope this catches everybody doing well. Y'all have a good night.